Welcome to the Symphony Podcast. October 3rd, we're recording, missed last week, but today I'm sitting down with Matthew to talk about, we've got a topic, but we also have just like a general kind of like couple updates, some stuff to share, what we've both been thinking about. So welcome to the show, Matthew. How you doing?
Doing great. I feel like we kind of have like a general structure for this episode, but not like a real topic. I think vaguely I remember us talking about setting the space to create and kind of like what that looks like, which in my mind kind of goes to getting out of your own head a little bit, which right before this we were talking about how you're in your head a little bit today. So it's a good topic.
Lately a lot, honestly.
Me too, actually. So this is a good time to be talking about this. I feel like the energy's been a little heavier in my life recently than I'm typically used to. So it's taken some extra effort to kind of like get myself to the mental space that I want to be.
Dude, me too. Since like, I guess we did that update episode when I left Creative Live, and it was kind of like a nice honeymoon period, a couple weeks there where I like wasn't working and I was just kind of fired up about this next chapter. The reality sets in that when you're like, I don't know, man, it's just been a little bit more, there's been more friction there than I was expecting.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know. I like to think every time I come across something, it's like the aha moment, click, and now I move forward and like kind of solve that problem. But today I actually think I might have come across a few ideas that have unlocked what appears to me to be like the biggest obstacle that I continue to come up against, which is myself. Like whether it's just like getting in my own way, not even just like sitting down to do the thing, like whatever it is, if it's like acting on arete stuff or if it's preparing for this podcast, like all it is for me is sitting down physically in the chair with my water, my caffeine, whatever it takes, and like doing it. But for some reason, like I've just been dancing all around. I posted about it the other day. Like I'm spending more time thinking about what I don't have than what I do have, and just executing towards those things, and like just kind of trying to get real about that. So yeah, I've got a little quote here from Julia Cameron's The Artist Way that I'll pull in a second. But yeah, dude, what have you been kind of thinking about in this realm?
Oh, well, I was gonna say, just kind of in response to what you were just talking about too, I feel like when you do enter the space of completely trying to like freelance and be entrepreneurial, like there's almost an extra pressure that's added to that like concept of how you're spending your time, or like knowing what to focus on, or just like sitting down and like doing the action, because you don't have somebody who's like, hey, this is what we need to get done today, like do this, this, and this, and it'll move us forward. Like you feel fulfilled because you're doing what your job is asking you to do. Whereas, when you're an entrepreneur, all of a sudden it just becomes about you having to decide what the right thing is to spend time on that day. And even while you're doing it, you can still have those questions of like, God, am I even like doing the right thing right now? Like, am I focusing on the right thing, or should I be working on something else? And so I think that is, at least for me, why writing things down that I want to accomplish the next day has been massively helpful, because or else I spend all this time kind of like spinning my wheels but not really going anywhere. And that, paralysis by analysis concept of just you're so in your own head that you're spending so much energy just thinking about the fact that you're in your own head and like wondering what you should be spending time on. Like all of that is requiring a lot of mental energy that could be harnessed toward whatever you actually just need to do. And something about like doing it the day before, it almost like creates that feeling of like, oh no, I thought about what I needed to get done yesterday when I was in like a clear mindset. And so you don't spend that time kind of like decision making on what your schedule should look like that day.
Yeah.
That's been helpful for me, at least. I don't know.
Yeah. That's smart. I think, yeah, that's totally true. And there's things on my to-do list that have been there for literally months. My taxes, always, for one. But yeah, the thing that I'm kind of like coming up against a little bit more is just like the self-analysis and self-doubt thing. That's why like, dude, it's not like I've been battling it like all humans for such a long time, and I feel confident, like I've come a long ways. I don't like sweat and get like red in the face as much as like when I used to start these podcasts. I'd be like freaking out because I'd be like my nervous system would be reacting to like the heightened sense of like whatever, we're recording a freaking podcast, like who cares, you know? And I don't know, I feel like there's kind of a balance to be struck there where like you care, but at the same time, like caring too much is actually counterproductive to the quality of whatever you're creating. We've talked about it before, like as soon as you start thinking about the fact that you're talking, now all of a sudden the talking itself is being impacted by that. So yeah, instead of just letting it flow. So this, give me just like just entertain me here, and I'll share a quick quote from Julia Cameron. I just like, I was in Idaho a couple weeks ago, I mentioned, and kind of touching base with a mentor of mine, Clarence. He gave me this book. I've heard about it, have not read it myself, and I opened it up. It's called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's a classic. But I got 2 paragraphs. One is just the start of basically like week 1. So like the whole thing is set up like a 12 or 13 week program, something like that, to just like a spiritual path to just like unlocking your inner creative. And yeah, so she basically says this concept is called shadow artists, and it resonated with me. One of our chief needs as creatives is support. Unfortunately, this can be hard to come by. Ideally, we would be nurtured and encouraged first by our nuclear family, then by ever-widening circles of friends, teachers, well-wishers. As young artists, we want to be acknowledged for our attempts and efforts, as well as for our achievements and triumphs. Unfortunately, many artists never receive this critical early encouragement, and as a result, we may not even know that they're artists at all. So, like, I don't know about you, but like my parents were never like, oh yeah, pursue art, that's a viable path. So I've always had this kind of thing around like, you know, to your point, like what's creating value is very obvious when you have a job and you're on this path, but when you're in this more amorphous world of art and creativity and entrepreneurship, there's like a I don't know, like a belief that it's viable, but then beyond that, like kind of what I was saying, like the self-doubt, and like I just fear, dude, the regret of getting to later in life and looking back and being like, all right, clearly I'm an artist, an entrepreneur, and a creator. Like if I look back on my life and I'm like, oh, I could have done this, I could have pursued that, and like where I'm at is I don't really know what to pursue. Like I'm in a place where there's so endless possibility, but not necessarily much certainty. So like reading this also really resonated. So it said like, protect the artist child within. Remember your artist is a child. Find and protect that child. Learning to let yourself create is like learning to walk. The artist child must begin by crawling. Baby steps will follow and there will be falls. Yucky first paintings, beginning films that looked like unedited home movies, first poems that would shame a greeting card. Typically, the recovering shadow artist will use these early efforts to discourage continued exploration. Wow. Judging your early artistic efforts is artistic abuse. And so, like, I've been doing this a ton, like, trying to get back into writing, trying to build some momentum, like, in this new chapter of my life, like, judging it right away, like, trying to write a blog and then, like, edit it as I go. It just basically doesn't get done.
Right.
So yeah, man, this is some of the stuff that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, no, I love this conversation because I think art is so tricky also because it's not necessarily like such a small percentage of artists have a situation where they're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna, you know, give you an advance of X amount of money, so just like go work on this thing, right? Like so much of art is people working independently on something that they don't even know what the outlet for that thing is, but they're just doing it every single day. And so like with writing or with music, it's like you have to do the creation process first, and then after that there's like a whole other game that's involved in like trying to find an outlet for whatever that creation was in a way that can monetize your project. But like that time spent, you know, in that creation period, like whatever that piece of the quote that was like learning how to create is like learning how to walk, like there's almost this, you have to like sink into this space of like giving yourself the grace to work on something that you know that you're not going to get paid for right now. So like, you know, the value of it is not going to get recognized for like a very long time, and that can be so frustrating because I think that just opens you up to have more of those self-deprecating thoughts and like those like wonders about like, am I any good? Is what I'm saying even making any sense? Like, is anybody even going to recognize this as valuable? Like, will I even be able to put this anywhere? And like all of those questions just flood in because you don't have anybody who's like, hey, this is good, like keep it up, or like focus on this, or make it this way. You're just kind of like throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. And the only way that you're going to be able to get to a point where it is really solid and valuable is if you just like continue to make that a practice in your life. And it's like, yes, some of it is not going to be very good, but like you increase your chances of making something very good, meaningful, and long lasting if you create a practice of just the creation aspect in of itself. And so, like, I don't know, I feel that with music, with writing. It's like sometimes like I don't have any like solid outlets that I'm like, oh, I'm writing this for this company or for this blog or for this like brand, or like I'm making music that I know is going to be sold on these platforms or, you know, picked up by these artists. But at the same time, it's like I'm just sharpening those tools consistently so that like, I don't know, I think there's so much value in just the action itself, both like for career purposes, but also just mental purposes and like your own sanity, or at least, I mean, my own sanity. I feel like I'm in better places mentally when I'm doing things that creatively that bring me joy pretty much every day.
I hear you, man. No, it's good.
How do you get out of your own head?
Yeah, and it's like, how do you build momentum? You don't want to judge your own stuff. Like, that's kind of what I'm finding is like a big roadblock, is just like, don't worry about judging it today. Like, just keep creating, to your point, like get that practice going. And then it's like, once you're sitting in the chair doing the thing, like the momentum is there. So, yeah, I think, I don't know, like last week, working on just getting out there on foot, hitting the streets, getting products in people's hands. We did an event at LA Fitness, dropped into a couple local gyms, and like feeling some momentum and some like positive feedback come from just something as simple as like a cold reach out. Hey, we love your products. Yeah, we'd love to like be one of your wholesale accounts and, you know, sell it at our gym. Like that feeling. And I remember talking to this woman that I met last week. Both of us were like resonating on this, like, I don't know, just this positive level of like creating new things. And so I don't know what like this next chapter really like looks like. So that's why there's some uncertainty on like, okay, what skills do I need to develop in order to like get to where I want to go? Because we talked about a couple episodes ago, like skills have utility. I think Tom Bilyeu was the episode on Rich Roll, but it's a little more like you're focused on your music, your, you know, leadership in the business, your podcasting, like all these different things, and just kind of like believing that it actually is going to lead to something valuable. That's kind of where I'm at, you know, like
Surfing.
I forget who it was, surfing, totally. Like if you want, there's so many things to do that in order to decide what to do, you just need to do the thing that you're like most curious or passionate about. And so I've been trying to like give myself that space. Like, okay, today I'm just going to sit down with no time limit and just like try and really like think about what clips could I pull into the podcast. Or like I literally sat down and read some of this book, and then I listened to 3 different podcasts, and just trying to kind of create the space that in a normal week, like when I was working, would have just never happened. Like I wouldn't create that space to happen. And then all of a sudden I'm like in a way different mindset, like, yo, let's get on the podcast. I got some stuff to talk about, versus like feeling dragged into some of these. Not that I like don't think that all of our episodes are good. Obviously, like we believe in ourselves enough to like put them out, like publish them. But like some episodes are better than others. Some conversations are better than others. Like some interviews are better than others. And I don't know, just kind of like thinking like, how can we serve the people that listen to this in the best way? Like if someone tunes into this episode, like what's going to make them like think, okay, that's value that I just brought into my life from that conversation. Those guys aren't just like blowing fucking air in the wind because like they have a weekly podcast. Like that's kind of where I want to get to. And I think my theory is that just like more prep time and just like giving it the fucking, just like, I don't know, giving it what it needs in order to grow is what we need to do.
I also think Yeah, I think two things that I would like for people to take, because I feel like when we speak truthfully, it can validate other people's own experience. And so I think just sometimes it helps to hear other people who are expressing similar feelings to what you're potentially going through. And I think like, especially in the entrepreneurial world, like I know that it feels so good when I finally talk to someone who just like really gets it, like gets the pains and the struggles and like and just even to have that conversation is like therapeutic for me sometimes, where it's just like, wow, I feel heard, I feel seen, I feel validated. And then another thing is like, I feel like you and I take in so much media kind of in the realm of everything that we talk about here on the podcast, that just kind of like you talked about, like bringing clips in or referencing books that we've read or podcasts we've listened to, or just, you know, little snippets of stories that we think are interesting. I think that's very helpful for people too, or I hope that it's helpful. And I think that we should definitely continue to do that, but maybe even like do a little bit more of it than we currently do.
Yeah. No doubt. All right. Well, I know, you know, we got a quick episode today. I don't know. Do you want to talk about anything else on this one?
I personally just experienced the value of kind of like going away for a sec. Tori and I just went, we were both feeling just like a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit burnt out, a little bit kind of just like not mentally ourselves. And like I was experiencing it too, where I was like even not really feeling motivated physically, which is like such a red flag for me, because I am like, that's like my life. I'm usually so excited. I always make time for it. Like I'm looking forward to it. It's like the fun part of my day is when I can go like get active, get some exercise, go surf, like just take a walk, like do whatever. And I was like in such a mental rut that I was even like, basically feeling like things that I typically enjoy, there was just this layer of dullness around, and I like couldn't get motivated to do them. And so I was like, damn, like I really need some level of a reset, like just get my mind off of things. And I think in the past I've fell victim to this too, of like doing things with the intention of trying to like reset yourself, or like with intention of like, you know, I'm gonna go do this so that I can feel like creatively juiced or like whatever. And so this past time Tori and I decided that we wanted to go take a little like getaway, and so we just went 2 hours northeast to Idlewild, a little mountain town, just hung out in a little Airbnb for 2 days. But instead of like going into that with like I'm gonna get this out of this weekend and I'm gonna come back like creatively inspired and I'm gonna like get out of this rut, I just like went there and just kind of like allowed myself to not think about anything and just kind of do the days exactly how I wanted, like when I wanted, and it was just like medicine, dude. It was like, because I don't know, like it was, I feel like my conscience is always split throughout the days when I feel like, you know, it's a work day, or like, and I feel like my responsibilities are so like scattered across the board that it always feels like I'm being like pulled in one direction or another, and kind of having to like plan out my day from that position. So it just felt so nice to give myself a couple of days where I'm just like, you know what, you're going to do whatever you want to do today, and like on your own time, and just kind of be in a beautiful place, like experience nature, walk around with no like agenda of, okay, I got to make sure like I get this done, or like I'm using this time to get creatively inspired for this project, or, you know, none of that. It was just like, what do I feel like doing right now? And it was so nourishing. And then, you know, I felt like I came back with just a little bit more gas in the tank, like when it was time to come back and like go back into, you know, the work schedule and all that stuff. I felt like rejuvenated. And then kind of my motivation for these other things started to return. I started getting a little more fired up about the work that I was doing. I felt motivated to go work out again. So I think that was very helpful for me, and just like a little change of scenery. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, like just being outside, kind of having, Tori calls it a monk day, where you just give yourself everything, like what you want to do. Just like don't have any plan, but just like do what feels good in the moment, and kind of like let that be your schedule. I also heard, sorry, this is a long kind of ramble moment, but that guy, I think his name's Michael Easter, the guy that wrote that Comfort Crisis book. I follow him on Instagram, and he yesterday posted a story how he was like, oh, on Sunday I empty the tank. And like that was when he was like, that's when he does his long run of the week. Like he really just like goes for it on Sunday. Like that he has a solid portion of his day where he's like, okay, this is the day that I do my long runs, or this is the day that I do my really difficult exercise. So he's just like really physically exerting himself, doing something challenging, intentionally putting that time in his Sunday. And then he says by doing that, he's kind of like ready to go the next day for the week. And he like feels like he's, used himself in a way that's, because I don't know, there's so many ties between, like physical exertion and mental capacity and like positivity and all that good stuff. So, and so I did that yesterday. I kind of used yesterday as like a physical exertion day of like went on a long run, went surfing, got in the ocean a bunch. Tori and I played paddleball, went and got a workout, like just did a very physically active day. And my mindset last night and coming into this morning was just so positive and just like clear, and I just felt amazing. So I think like a combination of kind of like that separation point of just a different perspective, different experience, new place, and then some real like physically pushing myself a little bit, that really worked wonders for my mindset recently.
Dude, that's great to hear. And yeah, I just always I really respect how you guys are like conscious about taking time to reset and also connect with one another. Like Alondra and I were talking about this, like how in her culture in Mexico growing up, this is just like a broad generalization, but I would honestly probably agree with it, is like they really prioritize relationships, whereas in the United States, a lot of the time we prioritize career. So my dad came home, he got home at night, but like we called it the office monster because he would sometimes stay late at the office. And like, that's just kind of like part of our culture, is that like the, parents work. That's just part of it. And like, not that they don't work in Mexico. Okay. This is like not really like going the right direction. Kidding. But basically, like, she was asking like, Kyle, why would you prioritize your career over your relationship with the most important person in your life? And I was like, well, actually, like the way I see it is prioritizing my career, being the best version of myself, is paramount to showing up in this relationship. And so it's like, not that it's about prioritizing one or the other, but I don't know, I just got thinking about how you guys like take time and create space for both for yourselves and together. Like, I think that's a super healthy way to spend time. And
it is both though, too. Like, I mean, because I do think it blends in the sense that sometimes prioritizing your career does mean prioritizing your relationship in this weird way, like in terms of like financial abundance or like opportunity that you need to like grasp right now so that you can like set yourself up to like really start developing the life that you want for you and your partner. But it's like, but if you're so in that mindset that you're not taking time to like really actually spend time with that person, like that's, it's a balance that needs to be found for sure. But I don't think they're like completely separate, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Aside from like how you're actually call it like performing in life, like whether you find, okay, I'm like currently at a level of success that I'm happy about. Like there's a author, her name's Liz Gilbert, and she was on Chase's podcast one time, and she's like, to me, and I'm paraphrasing, butchering, but what she said was like, to me, the ideal, like the woman that I want to be is a woman at peace, like just going about her day. She was, she sold 10 million copies of a book called like Eat, Pray, Love, I think it was.
Sorry, yeah.
And
it was a movie too.
Yeah, and she talks about how like she didn't want to write another book like that, and she wanted to write another book that was way different, and like her audience wasn't really ready for it and all this stuff. But she talks about prioritizing herself and her mental health above her career, like intentionally. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, what does it even matter if we make a good podcast or if we like move some units of root strength and Shroomy if like I walk into the kitchen with like anxiety in my chest, you know, or
Yeah.
like if I'm not at peace in the moment as much as possible throughout the day. So like the goal that I've been trying to embrace is like really recognizing like when I'm feeling, whether it's anxiety or stress or whatever. And to be honest, man, I've been feeling it on a fucking regular basis, which is hard for me to admit because I'm not really an anxious person, but letting it go slowly for sure. I don't know, just kind of like recognizing it, and instead of like having the goal be, okay, I need to get XYZ done, I need to be making this much money and doing this consistent podcast, it's like, no, really the goal should be, I need to walk out after this podcast and like just be at peace throughout my day, and then from there the other things will happen at a better rate. At least that's what I'm betting on.
I think that important. Yeah, I fully agree. I think being at peace with yourself and like that concept. I think it's like Buddhist or Taoist of like wanting what you have and like just being there, you know. And like, and it's interesting too. Tori and I went and took a sunset walk the other night, and she had this deck of cards that were just question prompts.
The deck.
And And
wait, no, she's got a couple decks.
She has a couple decks. I think you're thinking of the animal card one, which
yeah,
those are great too. But these were just like question prompts, and we ended up starting to ask like a handful of people that we just like saw walking up and down the stairs by the beach. And one of them was this older woman, and I think I don't remember exactly what the question was, but it was like, what is the most like important thing? It wasn't. I don't even remember. But basically, she was saying like, her response was that the ideal like mindset or the perfect way to be is just, it's about like contentment and just like knowing that life is going to be really good sometimes and really bad sometimes, but like if you can just be content with where you are in the moment and just kind of like stay even keeled about everything, like that was enough in her mind. And I resonated with that a lot too, because it's that same concept. It's just like being at peace, like, and just, you know, kind of zooming it all the way out to the fact of like, okay, I'm alive, I'm here, and my life is, you know, really good. Like I have people that I love, I have a functioning brain and a body that can take me places, I have a roof over my head, I have food to eat. Like just there's always something that you can draw out that you're grateful for, even in the midst of things being really terrible and difficult. So I think I don't know, I just like that response a lot.
Beautifully said, man. And it's a good spot to wrap up. My fun fact didn't make it into the episode.
Yeah.
It's not even a fun fact.
It's not too late. Like, we got to hear it.
So I booked a flight down to San Diego, a Saver fare from Alaska, and then realized I couldn't make the flight, as you know. So I called Alaska today and I said, hey, look, I had COVID and I wanted to rebook my flight. Is there any way that I can get my refund on my non-refundable Saver fare ticket? They said, oh, you had COVID. Oh, well, absolutely, we'll credit your account the full amount of the flight. So if anyone out there wants a little heads up, this is value for the pod listeners. If you book a Saver fare, you can just call and tell them that you had COVID. They'll give you a refund.
There you go.
And I did have COVID, so there's that.
Wow.
Completely side note, man, like I came out of having COVID I think it was my first time actually like having it. First time testing positive for sure. And I've had so much energy and vitality. I'm just fired up. So I don't know if like
now you mean
this thing afterwards. Yeah. I was down for like 2 hard days and then 5 days of like brain fog and like headache. And now I'm feeling crispy.
Dude, that's so interesting. I had the same experience. Like I felt pretty bad for like a solid week. It might have even leaked into 2 weeks. But then when I got back to it, I felt so rejuvenated. And I think that's like, I think that's because it's so rare that we ever, and I know you're like this too, but like that we give ourselves like a solid week to do nothing, to literally just rest.
Steve, what up? You're on the pod. What's up, guys?
Hey, what's
Steve's
going on, dude?
Are you? But no, yeah, you're definitely on the pod. But yeah, well, we're wrapping the episode up just in time.
Thanks for watching,
dude. My pleasure. All right. Well, I'll hit record here, and if Matthew, peace, brother.
Peace out.